Evening, everybody. Cookie here, just checking in with my first look at Storm Shadow. The hero I most compare him to is Duke because they're both indestruct heroes. They both provide a vitality effect. Biggest difference being that Duke is universal and Storm Shadow only is Air Force. So that is going to be one key difference here. Storm Shadow is only an upgrade if you have Air Force. If you don't, then Duke is the better hero. If you look at Storm Shadow's attributes, the preparation skill is a 40% indestructible effect. Duke is 38%. Storm Shadow gives 25% vitality in the preparation skill. Duke does give you vitality. I think it's 20%, but it's part of his level 5 skill. The active skill for Storm Shadow is 2 skill attacks that randomly deal 155% damage to one enemy unit each time. So it's basically 155% on one stack, 155% on another stack. It could hit the same stack too, twice, but it could happen in any row or column. Now, Duke's active skill is a 130% attack to 3 enemy units in the back row. So while Duke does 390 compared to Storm Shadow's 310%, Duke hits the back row. Storm Shadow could hit the front row, middle row, or back row. So I think there's always a value increase when you're knocking out units up front because they hit you sooner in the fight than they hit units in the back. But Duke does do more damage to the units he hits with his active skill. And then if you look at their... and as part of Duke's active skill, the units he hits get 15% debilitation. So that's a attack decrease. So that does help as well. And I guess that is part of his active skill. Storm Shadow will later get ignition as part of his level 5 skill. So that's kind of where they're different. Duke does debilitation. Storm Shadow gets ignition. The level 3 exclusive skill is the same. It's a 30% attack increase for all units when they're in battle. The level 5 skill is the same as it relates to the indestructible effect. It gives them one more round. But for Storm Shadow, it's a 50% ignition effect that affects 3 enemy units at the beginning of the round, every round. For Duke, it is a 20% vitality. So basically, you're not getting the 15% debilitation, but you're getting 50% ignition to 3 units. And you're getting 25% vitality instead of 20% vitality. The level 7 skill is a little different. The indestructible stays the same. It's extended by 10% for both of them. And then with Duke, it was an 80% damage increase on the skill attack. For Storm Shadow, it's 2 more active skill attacks, which basically doubles the active skill attack. Now, if you remember, Storm Shadow's active skill attack was basically 310% to anywhere, right? Because it could be any 2 units, 155 each. So now that'll be 620%. And if you remember, Duke's was 390% in the back row, hitting 3 units, 130 each. So if you increase that 130 by 80, it's 210. So it's about 630%, but in the back row only. So that bridges the gap of the damage that it does. And Duke only hits the back row, whereas Storm Shadow will hit 4 different units, or 4 units anywhere. So looking at it, I mean, Storm Shadow gives you extra vulnerable, extra vitality. The ignition makes him play well with the bod and Duke, bod and Brady, while the vitality will make him play well with Cranston and Kai. So basically, I think for Air Force, because of the increased indestructible and the increased vitality plus the ignition, it's going to be an upgrade to have Storm Shadow, even at level 5 over Duke. But at level 7, I think you're going to see a bigger upgrade from having Storm Shadow. If you don't have Air Force, obviously Duke is the better hero. I still think Duke's a really good indestruct hero, and so there may be some, room to wiggle there. Anyhow, that's the statistical look based on the, the numbers and the descriptions. I'll do some testing in a bit and get back to you guys with what the results say. For now, Cookie out.